Nominations are now open for the 2017 Bioceuticals Integrative Medicine Awards, the BEMAs. As healthcare practitioners, we care for our patients, and while our therapies can have a major impact on them, there are few opportunities for us to celebrate our success stories as a profession. Now is the time to have your contribution to integrative healthcare recognised. There are many different categories and, as usual, great prizes to be won. For more information, go to the Education tab at bioceuticals.com.au. This is FX Medicine, and I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. Joining me on the line again today is Beth Bundy, who's a qualified naturopath of over 17 years, specialising in integrative and functional medicine. She worked previously as technical consultant with Pathology, one of Australia's original functional pathology companies, and is currently training health practitioners nationally as clinical consultant at Naturopath Integrative Pathology Services, where she's in high demand as an engaging, informative speaker. She also works as functional medicine practitioner in a busy and highly successful integrative medical practice. Welcome back to FX Medicine, Beth. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew.
Now, today we're going to be talking about just a short snippet, I guess, functional pathology for children.
Yes.
So, notwithstanding that, kids are patients as well, but I guess the first area is that it's much harder to sort of ascertain exactly what's wrong in a child because they can't normally express with eloquence what's going on in their bodies.
Yes, well, they usually have a sore tummy, which could mean they've got a sore head or a sore toe or something else. So, yes, and obviously it will depend on the age of the child too. And, because obviously the smaller the child, the harder it is. The older they get, they can be a little bit more explanatory, and so then it's a little bit easier to decide which way you're going to go.
So what are the main conditions that you see practitioners wanting to test for in children?
Well, the big one is definitely gut pathology. So, the kiddie might, or the mother will explain that the child got a lot of bloating or perhaps some constipation, or perhaps some loose stools, or I had one recently that had a lot of yellow stools. She was worried about the yellow stools. A failure to thrive or malnourishment. So the kiddie's small on the, my kids are much bigger now, I can't remember, on the maternal health scale. They have that scale about if the kid's within the percentile, or if they're comparing the kid to the other kids at school, the kid's a bit little, or they're malnourished, the kids who only eat Vegemite sandwiches and French fries, though at least the kids are getting some B vitamins out of the Vegemite, so for that we should be grateful.
Yeah, and a bucket load of soda.
Yay, Vegemite, says the Aussie. Also, another big one is food sensitivities or suspected food sensitivities,
right,
especially with things, with skin conditions. So, we'll have a lot of kids that may have eczema or dermatitis, those sorts of things, or rhinitis, sort of upper respiratory issues. So things like an IgG or IgA can be handy in this instance, especially if it's related to gut or respiratory conditions. And then we have, I would say, the third one that of the big three would probably be mood and behaviour. So either learning disorders or behaviour issues, maybe anxiety, perhaps autism, though some kids aren't diagnosed as early as one would like. So they would probably be the main three that I would think. And then, of course, there's other conditions that come up along the way, but generally for smaller kids, I would say gut, and that includes food, skin, and behaviour.
I think we have to make the salient point to our listeners that any child with, an upset tummy, who has bloating, constipation or diarrhoea, and particularly if there's other symptoms of poor arousal, if you like, and things like that, that they should always be checked medically to exclude sinister causes for that sort of issue. But I think it's very interesting about the food allergies. I've got to ask about that. This constantly raises its head about cross-reactivity. So can you comment on that? What's the issue? What's the real issue with cross-reactivity, and how sensitive are these and specific are these tests for allergies?
Right. Well, cross-reactivity can be that if the patient is, say, have heightened sensitivity towards a particular food item, then the proteins in that food can be similar or like another food. So they could be reacting to, say, wheat, but they're also reacting to corn and kiwi fruit.
Right.
So I can't remember off the top of my head all the related families. The test, you can't necessarily, with the tests that I'm aware of, correlate that, if you're reactive to this food, then by default it will mean you are reactive to X, Y, and Z. You can really only take what comes up on the food sensitivity test, work with that, and then remember we don't always just look at the test result being gospel. We also have to take on what the mother tells us about how the child also reacts to, or she feels that the child may also be reacting to X, Y, and Z. And I usually, mums are pretty intuitive with their kids because we watch them like hawks. So I think that, you have to take that into the story as well. So if corn doesn't come up on the test result, it may not be a direct reactivity to the corn, but that's not to say that there may be some other issue with that food or that it's in something. I find even that I have a bit of sensitivity to wheat, and even if I eat some of the wheat-free, gluten-free breads, I still have trouble. I still get similar symptoms, and it then becomes down to, well, what else is in these food stuff? So am I reacting to the wheat anymore, or is it something else in the food stuff? And I think that's, that brings up a whole other issue of, if your kid's eating a processed packaged foods, what else is in it? And even then, if you're saying, no, I make my food from scratch, still where's the quality of that? And, we've got pesticides and environmental toxins, yada, yada, yada. So it does become a very difficult, and I don't believe we can be absolute about all these results we get. We have to just add it into the melting pot of what we're seeing with a case, what our knowledge that we have, then the results from the test, and then we can devise a treatment plan. As a starting point.
But I think that's the salient point you make, is the pathology test that we request. Obviously, if you're looking at kids, it's a tricky area because you want it to be as non-invasive as possible. But it's got to be also relevant. That might change the course of the treatment. Otherwise, why bother? If you're going to do the same treatment, who cares?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What interests me about these things, though, is that, you might think, okay, so it's a gut-related symptom. So therefore, you're going to do gut-related type tests, even if that's, let's say it's looking at food allergies. And yet, speaking with Nicole Bilsma about toxic building syndrome and all of the molds and things that go that people can react to, I mean, it's just opening up a whole new can of worms for me. It's like, where do you think the cause is coming from? And I guess the second part of that is, how will it change the treatment plan?
Well, you have to start somewhere. And, and I'm totally into sick buildings and mouldy places and all that sort of stuff. But I guess generally that may not be the first place we go. We would look well, I personally would always look internally first or physically first. Then, of course, we have a whole lot of emotional and mental issues as well. Okay, we have to remember that kids who cannot explain how they're feeling emotionally perhaps will manifest a sore tummy or, I'm sick, mummy. I mean, those with children have all probably had a kiddie that doesn't want to go to school, so they feign a sore tummy, or perhaps we have done that ourselves when we were children. I probably did that.
Yeah.
So all those issues come into it as well. But I think, as you say, if you're just going to treat everyone the same way as they present, go for it. But sometimes either you as the practitioner or the mother of the patient, because I'm still talking about children under the age of 18,
Yep.
They're going to want something. Remember that our patients and their mothers are very Google friendly nowadays. They've usually looked up things, or they have some idea. Or I'm finding that they'll have more understanding if you say, well, we have to look at the gut, or perhaps we can look at some food issues. Though I find often it's the mother that will say, I think they've got food allergies. Can we look at that?
Yeah.
And in this instance, I would say, yes, you can, but perhaps we should look at their gut function first, because that is an issue where even if they do have a food sensitivity, I'm still going to want to work on their gut and how their gut deals with that. So I would still, come down that line anyway.
And I guess my other sort of concern with kids is if people are going to put the child on an exclusion diet, it's got to be somebody who's suitably trained in doing exclusion diets, because we're talking about a child that's developing and they need, they require those nutrients. So it's got to be somebody who's safe about it. My other concern is people who go, so therefore you're sensitive to that food and you can't have it all the time. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. In that, if we're talking naturopathic axioms here about the gut being the seat of all health and the cause of all, the root of all disease sort of thing, shouldn't we be concentrating on healing the gut so that we can handle those foods, at least to some extent? And lastly, there's that concept of, what do they call it, antigenic ambivalence, where even with a culprit food, you expose them to a small amount, every few days, just to make sure that they don't lose that knowledge of the food and therefore become totally sensitive.
Well, another thing to consider is also that biodiversity of the gut microbiome. So when you exclude, and I had a little bugbear about this too, Andrew, when you exclude so many foods, you are therefore not giving your bugs, your good bugs, enough food to thrive. And I have found this in many cases where people have been so restrictive, adults as well, so restrictive that when they reintroduce foods, they're hyperreactive. And some of that reason will be because the microbiome is not there to deal with it.
Yeah.
They haven't got enough animals in the farm.
Totally agree. Indeed, there's some very interesting research, seeing as we're talking a lot on food allergies. I think it's Mimi Tang in Melbourne, is it Monash, doing research with immunotherapy, treating, and I'm going to say that strong word, curing peanut allergy. Now we're talking anaphylaxis. And she's done 2 trials. One was with the immunotherapy, giving, I think it was 1/200th of a peanut. This is obviously in a very controlled, safe medical environment where if something goes wrong, there's adrenaline and rescue therapy on hand. So do not do this at home. But but very interesting research where they were challenging with a very small amount of the offending food. And we're talking about an immunologically active food creating an IgE response. And they were getting these kids not reacting to peanuts. Now, she's done a second trial with a lactorhamnosus. Forgive me, I can't remember the code. It's a Chinese supplier. And the thing that I need to know now that I haven't looked into is there a difference between the immunotherapy small amount of peanut alone, or the immunotherapy plus the probiotic? I want to see if there's a big difference there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it ties in with what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating and sounds a little bit homeopathic too, really. But I think it's fascinating that we have this real kind of, gluten is bad, or something is bad, and the other thing that I don't like is when people say, and you can never have that.
Yeah.
What is with this never have that?
Celiac's pain.
Okay, I appreciate IgE and anaphylaxis if you're not in Mimi Tang's room, but otherwise, this, and you can never have it again. That's not correct. That's not what these tests are about.
No.
They're about, I say it's for the now. For the now, we're looking at what is adding fuel to the fire. Let's get that out of the equation while I put the fire out, and then move on from there, because I don't want to take things off people forever. I mean, especially with some of the tests where we test coffee. Imagine taking coffee off someone for life.
No, I cannot. No, I cannot.
You would not have there wouldn't be much word of mouth referral, would there?
That's right. So I guess the next stage is, when would you refer a child for blood tests that might be more suitable to look at blood tests? I guess the immediate one would be something like, frank anemia, but you'd always be looking into the cause there. What other sort of tests?
That's exactly the first one I thought was iron. If we're really serious about that, you need a blood, iron studies. We're not going to do hair, or we're not going to do urine metals test. And generally, we don't like to traumatise kids with blood tests if it can be helped. But, of course, if you definitely need to get a blood test, you need to. And, heavens, on birth, they're pricked in the heel. Screaming ensures, but we make sure they're it's PKU, I think it is. They're checking for that, aren't they?
Yeah, phenylketonuria.
So therefore babies can have a blood test, even if they do screen the clinic down. But I would also recommend that you ring the Pathology Collection Centre, as in the headquarters, the help desk, and ask them if they can give you an idea of one of the centres that is got good feedback for doing kids.
Yeah. Because
there is a skill with taking blood, and some collectors are better than others. And I've got to tell you this, I was chatting to some prackies, and I had one practitioner, Genevieve, who told me that she had a child patient whose mother used to blindfold the kid and tell the kid that his favourite superhero was doing special tests on him.
What a cracker.
So I guess whatever bribery it might take to get the blood, but I thought that was quite cute.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to backtrack a tick. Sorry, Beth. It's just that as soon as we said PKU, I went, hang on, that's not the only test. So I just wanted to get this correct and make sure that our listeners were aware of it. Do you mind if I just interject and let people know what the tests are for the skin prick with babies? So it's PKU, phenylketonuria, and then you've got cystic fibrosis, then primary congenital hypothyroidism, amino acid disorders, organic acid disorders, fatty acid metabolism disorders, and then there's biotinidase deficiency, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, galactosemia, and hemoglobinopathies. So there you go. It's a lot more than what I thought, because I just twigged and I thought, hang on, I thought CF was in there as well, and glucose 6 dehydrogenase deficiency.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It's got a bit fancier than when I was born. Then,
well, I just remember. No, they were looking at 6 GDP or something.
G6PD.
G6PD. Thank you. I just had this memory. I just wanted to make sure our listeners were aware that it's not just PKU they look at. They actually screen for quite a number of these metabolic disorders, genetic type things.
Oh, I didn't know that there was that extent as well, so that's good. And just talking about heel pricks, the other way that some tests can be done on kiddies is a finger prick, using a lancet where they just prick the finger, so it doesn't have to be a blood draw out of the arm too. Now, there is only some tests. So you can do things like vitamin D. You can do I, G, and A with that way. You can do cholesterol, though I don't know why you'd be doing that on a child. You can do hormones, including the thyroid with a finger prick, and even PSA. But again, please don't do that on your children.
Yeah,
just yet.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an interesting thing. I have a very dim memory of that they're looking at screening younger and younger children for hypercholesterolemia. Yeah, because they're having to. Welcome to the Western world. But I can't remember what about the test, whether it's just a standard cholesterol test or whatever.
Right.
Just a huge issue, insulin resistance and, hypercholesterolemia, lipidemias.
How frightening.
Yeah.
It's really quite disturbing.
Yep.
But another thing I wanted to mention was, because I know you're asking about blood tests. So obviously when they are warranted, they need to be done. But there are tests, that are non-invasive, certainly that we can do. Obviously stool testing, which is easier because if you've got a kid that you can get a poo out of, or even with smaller children, you can get something out of a nappy. And, of course, this can be very helpful to determine any sort of dysbiotic gut situation. We can look at the parasites, bacteriology. We can look at the yeast that can be in that, as well as various metabolic markers.
Right.
So you can look at your butyrates and your pHs and
gotcha.
And enzymes, the pancreatic elastase, things like that. Obviously, you can do intestinal permeability, which is a urine test. Too.
And is that relevant for kids?
I wouldn't particularly think so, but not in really tiny small ones. But again, in older ones that do have maybe a poor genetic tendency, or perhaps in like the autism spectrum sort of disorders, where you may look at something like that. But you do have to remember, because there are paediatric kits for those tests, but you do remember that you are giving the kid lactulose and mannitol, so you have to be prepared of the aftermath, because it can make very loose stools, mums. So, but, it is possible to do, but I probably, there's probably an age bracket. I probably wouldn't do it under 5. I think the kid needs to be old enough you can explain to them how they may feel or what might happen after they've taken this yucky medicine.
Yeah.
Too. And then urine, you can do lots of things, really, for testing. You can do good old cryptopyrroles in the urine. You can look at amino acids, organic acids, so you can look at citric acid cycles, fatty acid cycles, vitamin cofactors, which is handy. You can do the methylmalonic acid, which is good for the B12 deficiency.
Yep.
Is handy. You could look at neurotransmitter metabolite, especially if you've got, behavioural issues with the kiddies. Wouldn't be my first port of call, but it is possible to do. Yeah,
but it really interests me, these metabolic byproducts of neurotransmitters, and they're sort of, dissed by the orthodox medical community. But I say, well, what else you got? You've got a 50% chance of whether forgive me, I better get my wording right. A psychiatric medicine, let's say an antidepressant, is going to work or not. So it's like, well, what else have you got?
Yeah, well, if you're worried about giving a kid a blood test, I would be majorly concerned about giving them a lumbar puncture to measure your true neurotransmitters.
Yeah, but I just think it's crazy that it's not at least entreated with some sort of curiosity and just saying, we should look at this. We should see what relevance this has, rather than just, oh, no, it doesn't work.
And let's find them on Ritalin. That'll fix everything.
Well, I just think it's really interesting that orthodox medicine was poo-pooing 10 years ago. It was just pooing, calprotectin and things like that. And now they're looking at it.
Yeah. It comes around eventually. The other thing that can be handy with the urine is porphyrin testing.
Right.
So for heavy metals. And again, this may be relevant more again in that learning or behavioural disorder sort of spectrum.
Yeah.
You can use hair testing.
Of course.
And then and you can use buccal swabs too. So for the some of the genetic testing, you can use buccal swabs or just saliva.
Right.
So, and generally, if you turn it into a game with the child, I mean, getting a urine test off a boy child is quite easy. Make it a game. Very easy to do. And most boys would also like to spit if you ask them to. So that can be quite handy. And the other thing I thought about is you can get fatty acids. You know how you mentioned fatty acids with the heel prick?
Yeah.
We can also do that in the finger prick for kiddies, which, again, can be very helpful, especially if they're not eating well, as in they're eating a lot of junky processed food, or they're just not eating, much variety.
Indeed, I see that as having good facility with things like behavioural disorders as well.
Absolutely.
What about CoQ10?
CoQ10 is one of those, it's a bit like vitamin C and glutathione. Yes, you can measure them, but they are quite transient. So it's very now.
Right.
It's what you see now, and then it's different.
Right.
It's now and it's different. In the blood that is. So in organic acid testing, from the metabolites, you can get a suggestion that perhaps CoQ10 is an issue because of the level of particular metabolites that are coming through.
Right. Right.
So that's probably how I'd preferentially measure that than in the blood.
Yep. And can I ask, in your experience as well, when you've seen kids, obviously these are more likely to be the kids with a behavioural disorder or a gut disorder. But I'm thinking about behavioural type disorders. Do you find that there's an increase in the results showing Clostridia in the stools? Do you see that?
Well, only if you've got to remember in some tests, Clostridia can only be measured in loose stool, and it is not a usual analyte in the test. It has to be specifically asked for.
Gotcha.
So I would say, as a rule, nobody asks for it. I'm often telling a lot of practitioners, if they say, oh, blah, blah, and the kid has diarrhea, I'll go, add a Clostridia in there. Request Clostridia, because that can be an issue. But the thing is, it's not regularly or routinely looked for. Interesting about Clostridia too was I heard somewhere recently that they're also putting that down for a possible Parkinson's. Wow. Yeah.
Trigger.
Cause for Parkinson's, which is
a factor.
Fascinating, yeah.
I think it's really interesting, but again, there's this: is it good or is it bad? There's a member of the Clostridiaceae, is that the phyla, where I harp on about this. I know the segmented filamentous bacteria, SFBs, they're a member of the Clostridia family. But what they do is they prime the young immune system in the infant. As long as you've got good guys to keep it in check, keep them in check, they prime for a good immune response. But if you've got an aberrant immune response from, lowered probiotic or commensal bacteria, or an imbalanced commensal bacteria, and you've got the genetic predisposition, then you can prime for Th17 and autoimmune disease. It was wonderful, really, really interesting work to me. With Dan Littman and Ivalio Ivanov. They're the two heroes of mine, if you like. But there's a whole host of others. But I just think it's really interesting.
Bag.
I know. Your
heroes are microbiology.
Yeah, I know. But I just think it's
Superman.
I just think it's really interesting that we tag something as good or bad, and it's like, well, hang on.
We have to remember that we do have Clostridia. We need some Clostridia. Like we need some of the E. coli.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
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 So they're very, E. coli is one of the most prevalent bugs we have in our gut. It's just it's a bit like soccer fans. You know, a handful of soccer fans are okay, fill a stadium of them, and then it gets a bit unruly. So and that's what I find about some of the poo tests is people are going, this hell for leather is, I found this bug, kill it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, how about we can all live harmoniously in the melting pot that is our gut and just
balance.
Rebalancing or just keeping everybody happy.
Yeah. That's why I've got to say I've loved doing these podcasts with Helen Patteran and Alessandra Edwards. Awesome practitioners. Getting so much useful information about how to rebalance the gut. Beautiful stuff. Yeah. So what other things? Deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies. We've touched on it. Are they commonly used, or is that more of a standard medical test that people would talk with their doctor about?
It's probably more a standard medical test when you're looking at your iron and
B12.
These for B12 would be, I mean, yes, we can do the methylmalonic acid in the urine, but as we said, we can't do iron. Or D you can do as a finger prick.
Now, this is very interesting.
B's are very difficult, again, to measure in the blood because they're so water-soluble and transient. Again, in an organic acids profile, you can get some indication of perhaps B vitamins. But generally, I would think the main vitamins I'm thinking of is D, B12 and iron is that you would look at. And then generally probably a practitioner would maybe garner from going through the diet of the kiddie what they may or may not be deficient in or, have insufficiency. So I must say when I was getting ready to have a chat to you, I thought, kids like fries. I actually Googled the nutritional value of fries. Yeah. And who knew? They've actually got fibre and vitamin C.
Bound up in a whole gunk of fat.
Yeah, exactly. But, I thought, at least they have something. Well, how can all these kids survive? There must be something in it. But, I would say that's not huge. I would say, and I'm speaking on behalf of practitioners, that I would think they would garner from the diet initially and then probably look at other things rather than go straight to a deficiency because generally, and I'm making a major generalisation when I say generally, I don't think we see a lot of frank deficiencies nowadays.
Right. Except for vitamin D.
Because as I said, except for vitamin D.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's, interesting, especially in a country like Australia where kids... Well, I was going to say when I was a kid, we were out in the sun all day, every day.
But that's when you were a kid.
So maybe
you didn't have
a very
PlayStation, Xbox, whatever it is.
That's right. We had Atari.
Yeah.
And, and I guess now the kids aren't outside as well, and so that is something. Is it starting that young? The whole vitamin D issue, and when we're seeing.
Yeah, and I've got to say, outside at the right time, getting sun on their skin. And for a very short amount of time. So the whole problem is the midday's bad, sun's bad. The sun's evil. It was just placed there to burn us. It's this nonsensical thing. I don't think we evolved from an amphibian to this without being exposed to the sun. But I think the issue is that whatever sun exposure we do say is good is in the wrong time where it can't make vitamin D. Rather than...
Yeah, and we're covered up. The kids have to wear hats and they're not allowed to go outside and play unless they've got their hat on.
That's right.
Or they at childcare, at creche and places like that.
Oh, primary school. No hat, no play.
Yeah, but even at creche, when my daughter was at creche, which was a long time ago, they were putting on sunscreen and hats all the way back there. So the kids, even when they were outside, they weren't really seeing the sun.
Yeah. And I guess the safety issue there is, well, what if you don't? You've got one person supervising 30 children or something, and so somebody's going to get horribly burnt.
Well, it swings and roundabouts of everything, isn't it? You overdo one thing or you underdo something.
A short amount.
I think that
Short amount of direct sunlight, is great.
Yeah, and talking about overdoing things, there is something that I want to, make mention of is, again, with some of these tests, is overdoing tests or doing them just because it sounds like a good idea. Oh, I heard there's this new test, let's do it. Some things are not recommended for children, and the first thing I'm talking about overdoing things would be an iodine loading test.
Right.
Because you're dumping 50 milligrams of iodine in the kid's gut. So
milligrams? Milligrams?
Yeah, milligrams, mg. Yeah.
What?
So I would not be doing this on children.
I wouldn't be doing that at all. 50 milligrams?
No, 50 milligrams, yep. So I'm quite, I would urge practitioners to not utilise this in children. You can just do a spot iodine. That will give you, enough information to go on.
Mm.
Are you okay? I know.
No, I'm not okay.
Oh, my God, I've made you speechless. The other one I want to mention is a liver detoxification profile that includes caffeine, paracetamol and aspirin tablets. Again, I would urge people not to do that on children.
Well, no,
thanks very much.
It's not appropriate under 12, yeah.
No, and the other thing is when people say, oh, well, do the test and just take half the dose. No, you've just buggered up the test because the test is working off a particular amount of product to do its measurement.
No, that's just inappropriate in kids under 12 because of Ray's syndrome. So you don't want to go there for medico-legal reasons.
Well, exactly. So both of those tests, I'm doing a complete no deal. So, and as I said earlier, intestinal permeability, I wouldn't be recommending in kids under 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is IgGs, IgAs, again, not under 6 months because the kid has to be exposed to the foods that you're testing them against.
Yeah.
So, I've had prackies with a 2-month-old saying, can I test for that? I'm going, no, I'd be testing the mother. If the mother's breastfeeding, measure the mother because she's feeding the kid. So, and also if a child, God forbid, is on immunosuppressive drugs, you can't do those sorts of tests.
Yep.
Because of suppressing the immune system. So I think sometimes we just have to, have a little bit of consideration about, like you said in the beginning of the show, why are you doing it? Is it going to change your therapy? And is it the best way to do it in a child?
And
in a child.
You know what? I'm also sort of lending myself, just thinking about the tests that you've mentioned, talking about the CDSA is going to be quite a commonly used one. A vitamin D one is a fingerprint. I get that. That's a bit of an exemption from what I'm thinking about. But with regards to CDSA and, testing the fecal matter, it's something that comes out of the child naturally without you having to do anything. You just catch it and test it rather than going into the child or giving something to the child to make something happen. And I just think this sort of test I think those sort of tests have got the greatest facility and certainly the greatest safety because they're just coming out of the child. You're just testing it.
Yeah. Wee or poo. Wee or poo is pretty, easy. You just got to run around and chase them to catch them.
Yeah.
And saying that, I would also encourage practitioners to greatly encourage the parent to read the instructions for the test, to do it properly because, it is a bit of a trick sometimes to catch wee and poo off kids. And so if you do it incorrectly and you have to do it again, it's
a waste of a test.
Pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's relevant because some of these tests, you need to avoid particular supplements or food stuff before you do them, because it will confound the test results. So it's like, please, please, please get your patients to read the instructions to get the best benefit. Because some of these tests, cost a pretty penny. And, And that's all well and good, but let's make sure we're getting our bang for our buck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Beth, thank you so much for taking us through. I got to say, we've ended up with more conundrum than answers, but you've given us some really good salient points to think about when thinking about the usefulness of doing any sort of pathological tests in children, but certainly the functional tests. So thanks for taking our listeners through that today. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure, as always.
This is FX Medicine, and I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. The 5th Bioceuticals Research Symposium will be held from the 21st to the 23rd of April 2017 in Sydney. This promises to be another sell-out event. For more information, including registration, go to the Education tab at bioceuticals.com.au.